Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another book review. And actually, I usually review Korean books that have been translated into English. But several years ago, starting in about 2014, I used to review books for a Korean radio show called EBS FM Morning Special. And they would ask me, I did a book like segment like a weekly book segment on that show for just over 5 years. And they would ask me to review English books. And they often asked me to, it was often books for like young adults, books that were a little bit easier to read in English. So anyway, I'm going to start dusting off some of those old reviews and reviewing them on the channel. And so the first one is for The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. So I first reviewed this all the way back in 2014. So I can't believe it. I really felt old looking back from my emails to find this review. So I've sort of updated the review a little bit and sort of added some reflections to it. But it was very interesting to go back and sort of revisit this novel a little bit. So anyway, let's just get into it. So John Green's novel aims to take readers on an emotional roller coaster from kind of a belly laugh humor to a heart wrenching sorrow. And it's a relatively slim book. And it's hard to believe, it really is hard to believe. It's been more than 10 years since readers first met Hazel and Augustus. And Hazel and Augustus are two witty, very self-aware teens. They reminded me of Dawson, the characters in Dawson's Creek. If anyone remembers Dawson's Creek, they were very self-aware, and they meet each other, they fall in love, and they're both grappling with terminal cancer. And looking at it now, over a decade later, so I think the story still has its charm, still quite a charming story for its type, for its kind. And lots of readers. There's quite a big fandom around this novel still, and a lot of those readers think that Green crafted a young adult romance that's it's beautiful, and it's sad, and it's funny, and it's poignant. And so there's a lot of love for this book out there, and a lot of fandom. So I will just talk about what is The Fault in Our Stars. So really, it's a love story, but it's a love story that is sort of overshadowed by impending loss. Sorry, excuse me. Okay. And so the narrator is a 16-year-old Hazel. And Hazel has a stage 4 thyroid cancer, and it's spread to her lungs. And Hazel says that she's a grenade. I'm a grenade. And so we understand, the reader understands that she has sort of a guarded personality. She's scared to get close to people. She fears getting close to people only to hurt them, when her illness, sort of claims her life, as it seems like it's almost certainly going to at some point in the not too distant future. Hazel's life changes when her parents force her to attend a cancer support group. And there she meets a 17-year-old Augustus, or just Gus. And he is another cancer survivor. He had to get a leg amputated because of his cancer. And Gus is very handsome and flirtatious, and he's sort of unashamedly drawn to Hazel and her sort of witty personality and her kind of no nonsense directness. And so where Hazel sees herself as a grenade, as a ticking time bomb or something, Gus just sees her as this brilliant girl that he wants to be hurt by. And so they very quickly bond over kind of books and jokes. And there's a book in this story that becomes very important to the plot. So Hazel's favorite novel is called an Imperial Affliction, and it has a sort of recluse. The writer is this reclusive guy, kind of like a J.D. Salinger kind of character. And eventually, they will go to Amsterdam to hunt him down and sort of question him about this book. But anyway, as Hazel and Gus's relationship gets sort of deeper, they navigate the usual kind of relationship difficulties. Some of them kind of sweet and ordinary, so sort of witty banter and kind of various hijinks. And then, of course, two more romantic ones like sharing a first kiss and traveling to Amsterdam and these kind of things too. But of course, all the while, the specter of their illnesses loom in the background. And we, the readers, are acutely aware that this love story might be tragically short lived. And this tension underpins even their lightest moments with some degree of poignancy. So a short life, Hazel's and Gus's story seems to say, can still be a rich, full life, and this is really the core lesson of the novel and the lesson that they teach each other, and perhaps also teach the reader. And so, one of the enjoyable things about the book is it's quite frank and funny, not too maudlin. It does get a little maudlin sometimes, obviously, but they confront their cancer with a kind of sardonic wit. Again, a little bit Dawson's Creekish, so I think well, quite funny at times. They sort of make jokes about the perks of having cancer, and Gus has this sort of habit of, carrying an unlit cigarette around with him. And anyway, so you have these sort of little kind of humorous touches. So it's not a morbid slog by any stretch. It's really more celebratory and sort of witty and charming. But by the time you reach the sort of final chapters, I think a lot of readers realize that Green has quite stealthily guided them to fall in love with these characters just the way they fall in love with each other, and then sort of springs heartbreak on you. So anyway, John Green is kind of a significant figure. It's different. He was very influential around about this time, probably peaked with the film adaptation of this novel. But before this novel was published in 2012, he'd already was already a successful sort of young adult literature world kind of figure. So he'd already done two novels called Looking for Alaska and Paper Towns. I think they were both adapted for films as well. I didn't see those ones though. But he wasn't just an author. So famously, he had him and his brother had these sort of YouTube channels and sort of education. They did these kind of educational YouTube videos, and it was very, very popular. One of them was called the Nerd Fighter Community, and so he already had quite a big following when he published his books, and obviously. A lot of those people who followed his online stuff purchased his books and so on. And, that sort of relationship, these days we talk about, parasocial relationships or whatever. But, obviously his followers felt like they had a close connection with him, and they sort of migrated over to become also his readers. And then these things, there was kind of a feedback loop or a connection between these things, right? And so he had a very visible presence in his fans' lives, and um, that was one of the reasons why he became such a big figure. He has an interesting personal background too, actually. So he was a student chaplain at a children's hospital, and so he counseled patients, young patients who had serious illnesses. And that, I think he was thinking about becoming a priest at one point, but then didn't, and started writing these stories. And he said that the kids he met were funny and bright and angry and dark and just human as anybody else, and that he wanted to write a novel that was a correction for the often oversimplified stories that would often be told about kids, young people, or sick people. And he wanted to show the sort of full completeness of their humanity. And that's where The Fault in Our Stars is his attempt to fulfill that mission. And so Hazel and Gus, they're not sort of saintly, cancer patients or just tragic figures. They're real teenagers, are quirky and frustrated, and they've desire, and they indulge in kind of gallows black bleak humor. They just also happen to be very sick. And so it's quite a nuanced portrayal, and that's part of the reason I think that this book still has so many fans. And the film adaptation. The film adaptation came out in 2014, was a very big hit at the time. I think it made over $300 million dollars all told, and so it was very successful. And I'm not sure if what it's interesting to think sometimes, why was this one but not like the other John Green adaptations didn't hit the same way this one did, right? This novel and the story really did sort of just it sort of rode the zeitgeist at the time, and it did become a really big. The film was really successful as well, and the book's strength, or one of the strengths, lies in the sort of wry, kind of sardonic narration that we get from Hazel, and you get this very intimate insight into her thoughts. Can the film capture that? How does the film work? So the film does a pretty good job of it. It's heartfelt and quite faithful to the source material. And Shailene Woodley at the time, she'd become successful because I think she was in a George Clooney movie, and I think she's George Clooney's daughter in the movie. I can't remember the name of the movie, and their mother is in an accident. I think that's where she broke out. And then Shailene Woodley did a few of these sort of young adult things. She was in another series called Divergent, which I also had to review for EBS, and it was kind of a Hunger Games knockoff, if I'm being honest with you. But she was pretty good in this, and this was kind of a star-making turn. And I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure if she quite maintained that level of success. Like, I know she was in Big Little Lies, that was quite popular, but I don't keep up with the careers of young actors these days so much. So, and then Ansel Elgort, he was in Baby Driver, and I don't know what else he was in, but he was fine in this, right? He's been dreadful in everything else I've seen him in. He was in the adaptation of The Goldfinch, the Donna Tartt book, and he's terrible, right? He's awful. But for this, he was fine. He was acceptable. But I don't think Hansel's got particularly good acting chops. Anyway, but they did have a lot of chemistry in this adaptation, and it was effective and charming and appealing, and it's very easy, to see why so many people are fans of their pairing in this film. There's a few things that we lose. So you lose her Hazel's sort of inner monologues. You don't get as much of that. A little bit more sentimental, maybe, than the book is. And but overall, I think it was a pretty successful adaptation, right? I think it's pretty good. If you're a fan of the novel, you'll probably like the adaptation. It's fun, and it really is. Just even when I was looking back over, sort of doing a little bit of research to update this review, The Fault in Our Stars really did have quite a significant cultural impact at the time. So obviously there's sort of waves of the young adult series, right? So it was Harry Potter, and then you had Twilight, Hunger Games, and they're really they're I think they're kind of the biggest three. And then you had a bunch of things that were sort of trying to emulate their success, and some of them are better than others. And then The Fault in Our Stars, it was the sort of romance, and it was like the sick kids romance. I think this was one of the first ones that really captured that trend. But it was genuinely a phenomenon. Topped the bestseller list, sold millions of copies, translated into dozens of languages. And I guess at the time, I don't think these kind of issues around talking about illness and serious sort of life-threatening diseases and so on wasn't as much of a thing in the young adult genre. uh at the time. But since then, obviously, there's now this sort of young adult sick, young sick people falling in love genre, and I'm not sure how great that is. I'm not sure if maybe this it's kind of gotten a little exploitative, perhaps. But honestly, I don't read them, so who knows? Maybe there's a lot of great books there. But yeah, so like I said, Hazel and Gus, they're not just sort of they're fully realized characters, right? They're not just kind of objects of pity or something like that, right? And so there was this book had a very a big influence, right? But these days, I think people there is a sort of sneering condescension towards this sort of sub genre of sick, sick young people following in love, right? But anyway, okay. So, there is a lot of truth in this story. Life can be rich and joyful and meaningful even when you're sick, right? And even interestingly, the novels also sort of there's a couple of quotes that have sort of passed into wider consciousness. So, okay, seems to be inexplicably popular, and then one of the lines from the book: "Some infinities are bigger than other infinities." And so a quick Google search, and you'll find this on tattoos and even in wedding vows and so on. And of course, there's lots of online communities dedicated or inspired by this book. And I think the part of the reason is because for a lot of young readers, it was the first book that sort of spoke or deals directly and a little bit honestly about mortality, not as some sort of thing in the future. It's like something that's good, that is shaping your life at the moment. And maybe for older readers like me, it reminds you that you should value your time, right? So anyway, I'm going to wrap up now, but sort of revisiting this more than a decade later, it does resonate a little bit differently. Wouldn't have ever read this had I not been asked to review it for a radio program. It's not something that I'd be terribly interested in picking up, right? But it is pretty captivating for what it is. These two young, tragic, star-crossed lovers. And now, if I was going to be more reflective, I'd say it's really it's about living with the knowledge that everything ends, right? And the older you get, like, I think we understand this idea that what you do with your time is extremely important, right? Don't squander your time on nonsense. Hazel and Gus might be their lives might be diminished by brevity, right? They're not entirely sure, but if anything, it's that the fragility that makes life more precious, right? And I don't know if I've got anything else. What else do I want to say here? Yeah, I think that's it, really. So, if you haven't read The Fault in Our Stars, or if you've dismissed it as a book for teenagers, or as an example of the sick kids genre, it's worth reading, and you might be surprised by what you find there. And it is very sad. And anyway, thanks for watching this review. And I'll leave it there for The Fault in Our Stars. And take care. See you in the next review. And thanks for watching.